if I zoom
Dang,
this over like
I
so,
had this idea
and we kind of
before
flush out, you'll notice this
when
alignment,
I
right? That Earth, Sun, three-eye atlas. There's also perfect alignment between Earth,
started
Mercury,
reading
Mars,
the
and a
Bhagavad
similar
Gita,
angle there connecting
which I
Earth
think I
and
still
Venus.
have that
And they
copy.
almost make a perfect
Um,
square there as well. So we often see enhancements in
there's a lot of
solar
references
activity
to
around
luster,
noble
which is
heliospheric
light.
planetary geometry like this.
In
And in
my
fact, we
brain, I
saw a
associated it
ton
with
of
warmth,
activity with Oumuamua
thus
as it passed
temperature,
through
thus
the inner
heat,
solar system,
thus
interacted with
energy,
the solar wind, and passed by
and
close to the Earth. Let's check it out.
through
Here we
that
see the perihelion
type
approach of
of
Oumuamua, and this was exact on the 9th of
deconstruction, or you want
September
to call it, or
2017. So it started up here, and
like a
then
thesaurus
swung
type
in,
thing,
passed through the inner solar flare connecting Earth and Venus. And then
started
almost
to
beat Juno to investigate Three-Eyed Atlas to get more.
started to realize that it was describing functions of life. I mean, I want to say human because of ego, but it's bigger than that. And I think this is going to be an example. But for the until we get to the next point, human life. So the Bhagavad Gita, when you're talking about this light, inner luster, inner light, um, fire, I was forced by my psyche to interpret that or associate that with the digestive system. Not that the digestive system is the answer, but the digestive system structure is the code. So this was back in, I was living in Canoga Park because I got the book at a thrift store. So it was like 2011. It was like 2011. No, maybe 2013. Yeah, more like 2013. I think, yeah. So, and it's 2025. So, I'm not 100% sure what all of this means, but now in 2025, or in August, this interstellar object has entered the Milky Way from what is expected to be beyond the theoretical, or for the most part, rationally accepted Oort cloud boundaries, which mark the perimeter of our home galaxy, and beyond that is intergalactic space. So this is coming from someplace else. So it's two other things, whatever. So as they're breaking this down, I'm gonna see if I can get this up.
Atlas to get more information. But if that passes through the solar system and no alien ships fly out, that does not rule out the fact that it interacted with us in an intelligent way. So let's get right into it. So let's start with its orbit. We see that here with our Sky Live orbital and solar system viewer, and you'll notice that Three-Eyed Atlas here is just very slightly inclined from the ecliptic plane of our sun and solar system, going all the way out to Neptune. Now keep in mind that the sun is also moving through space, so technically the sun's going like this and all the planets are kind of wrapping around it. but it's impossible to go through a visualization and actually point at things and explain it as we're doing that. So that actually, in fact, makes it even all the more remarkable that it's doing such a close swing through our ecliptic plane, because that means it effectively has the same velocity traveling as our sun in that direction. So this is pretty interesting.
Not really
As a separate
as
day,
interesting as
August
he makes it
18th,
out to be,
look,
but because another hilarious thing is
everyone.
today I also watched a video. Literally, I think it might have been the video just before. No. Okay, looks like just 3 videos before. It's talking about this new thing. So I don't believe particularly in the moon landing. I believe that was a staged event in order to hype up the what I consider to be Aryan Majesty, which is for lack of a broader concept, Anglican Freemasonic, Anglo-Saxon Freemasonic imperial expansionist campaign. So, but basically to advance their weapons technology, specifically ballistic, where now we have hypersonic missiles, in order to justify taxation. The power to tax is the power to destroy, according to a quote from John Marshall, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court in the 1830s. Like 34 years sitting Supreme Court Justice, second longest ever so far. So in order to justify designing these weapons to protect the ruling elite's interests from the peasant labor force masses, consumer labor force masses, they perpetrated the space program as an act of humanity. This is how advertising, this is how Aryan Majesty is a psychological phenomena, terminology of a distraction. It's the con man distraction. The majesty is, look over here. It's a concentration. That's why I call it if you understand majesty as fascination, which is the root of fascism, you also understand why I call Aryan Majesty a concentration camp psychological empire, because of the focus that it gets into participation, so to speak. So, but on that, I don't believe that doesn't mean I'm not a flat earther. I don't deny space and exploration and James Webb. I love the YouTube shorts. I like everything I see from Mars. I like, and these are little 30-second to 1 minute clips of rocks. That's about the gist of it, and dust. But it's like, fucking hey, man, we're looking at other planets. So, but now landing on the moon, no, that's a propaganda campaign, because my primary counter argument is radiation protection of the human body. That's the gist of it. The suits then, and this is why we still haven't gone back to the moon and no one else has gone to the moon, is because there is no viable technology that will protect the human body from the radiation exposure, ionizing radiation posing exposure on the surface of the moon, because it doesn't have a magnetic field or an atmosphere. That's my thing. Anything else, I don't give a fuck about the rest. So, but apparently this new argument coming out is that there was no way we could have gone to the moon because of the size of the rock. And I'm at the point right now where I want to get in this video. So there's no way we could have gone to the moon because of fuel supply, which, because I'm a fan of space, at the same time I'm like, I've never associated satellites with rockets. I've always associated satellite as kind of like a space kite, a glider. And like they're everywhere. We've gotten them we've been pretty successful at getting them to various locations. Um, so I'm assuming that as far as the idea of fuel doesn't has never registered in my head, based on my level of understanding, as an obstacle to space exploration. One of the reasons goes like this. There's a because I'm an anti-nuclear. Because Aryan Majesty's, you understand the key to Aryan Majesty is nuclear weapons. That's their. That's the key. They even nuclear power, because the premise for Aryan Majesty is they believe that at the last step of their salvation is that you're gonna need their mentality in order to safely address all. When you see every nuclear power plant, it's not a power plant, it's Aryan Majesty's last line of defense. The nukes that they don't have to detonate, that are in proximity to the most vulnerable targets of Aryan Majesty's enemy, which is the fundamental human species. They're human too, but it's psychological. So anyways, so yeah, I see, like, if a satellite wants to go from one planet to another, I'm assuming, I always like the way the space shoots, I'm assuming they got some kind of steam thing that just positions it in way, at angles in which it'll naturally be caught by forces that are able to be measured and anticipated throughout the system based on various factors, like we're about to show you right here. But for sizes of planets are a big factor, and it's not just the getting in orbit or staying in orbit, but it's also play a big factor in point A to point B, the distances that you're commuting. So I'll just get into this row. I'll put this up, I think.
Separately from the S4B. So now we have around 44,000 kilograms of spacecraft that is already at the speed required to reach the distance of the moon, but it's still fully fueled. And as I covered in a previous video, once they reached that 24,000 miles an hour and the engines were cut off, the speed was constantly fading away during the coast towards the moon due to Earth's gravity. So by the time they reached the point of circling the moon, their speed had naturally dropped to about 4,500 miles an hour.
Apollo 11 is 966 miles from the moon. Velocity 6,511 feet per second.
But that was too fast to hold an orbit around the moon, and if it was left unchecked, they would have just looped around the moon and began heading back to Earth. So when they reached the backside of the moon, the SPS engine on the service module performed a 6-minute lunar orbit insertion burn.
Okay, and then the point is that on the return trip back to the... Oh, actually, it's just right there.
The much weaker gravity of the moon, and then having the stronger gravity of Earth helping them return home, rather than the outbound journey, which was fighting against Earth's gravity. And for anyone...
Okay. So, okay, I've rumbled and rambled on. All that to say is, when you go back to the Bhagavad Gita and the luster within, as related to the digestive system, as is related to what we call the existence of life, as is related to what we consider to be the foundation of reality, which allows the whatever, the cosmos or Big Bang, whatever the hell you want to go with, to exist. That fabric, okay, is related to this thing. And to show you how it, as above, so below, so to speak, but also in a corpus hermeticum or Hermes Trismegistus sense, and maybe in the Buddha sense, Shakyamuni, as within, so without. In that earlier diagram where he's showing the sun, it's not really all that fascinating that the object that is entered the galaxy and has come to our solar system within the galaxy, within proximity, is now on an intersecting course that is, darn, there's some kind of a progenitive or something like that. Because the way he said the earth is moving and it's the trajectory is also, it's because the sun is literally the luster within the solar system, correct? You saw that? I mean, that's a no-brainer. We're good with that, okay? So it's literally the engine in the center of the body of this we consider the solar system. And the engine, which goes with the stomach, I have shorts on, is designed to do exactly what we're seeing happen. And that is to bring in foreign material so as to process it, deconstruct it, break down its components, apply them to appropriate conditions in order to produce specific results, which then creates waste. And effectively, life comes from waste. And if the sun is the engine, the waste of the process of the sun drawing in foreign material creates the debris, which is the body of the solar system. And I think that kind of can even go now, going through that right now on the fly makes me also think of this thing where they talk about the human body is recently discovered is basically 50% human cells and 50% bacteria. And that's untouched information from the broader spectrum of human dialogue, conversation. Or thought, really, because it's not in the conversation, it's not a thought thinking process. But in really being into Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, and Marshall McLuhan, and Hermes Trismegistus, I get this notion that I think that has to do with, because there's another study that did core samples at the bottom of the ocean. So it's the deepest point that's ever been done. And they didn't think they were going to find anything, but they ended up finding essentially what they called constellations of bacteria. So it's like when we look up in the sky, when back in the old day, in a natural environment, without synthetic lights, when we look up into the sky and we see what's called like a net of stars strung out over us, and it's mesmerizing, and it looks, that is basically also beneath us, but it's just not lit up. But it's bacteria, and apparently this bacteria tends to be in the billions of years old, and it challenges the very perception of time and life and existence. But that gave me the notion that part of our what we consider the unconscious is the essence. I don't want to say spirit. I don't believe in spirits and souls, but is the psychological construct of the mind of an entity, be it individual or collective, that exists on that scale of time, where there is no scale of time, effectively. When you're in the billions of years, in an individual being, Dracula looks like a speck of dust you flew off your nail. So, but on the flip side, human cells, they rejuvenate like about approximately every 7 years. So, I mean, technically, you don't, you're human wise, your human cells, they have a very short span of life, and I think that is very much reflective of what we consider the conscious, for fleeting part of our psychological being. This goes with the dual hemisphere, the right and the left hemisphere, the visual and acoustic. So you got the young and the old. But this is somehow significant information that I have not yet figured out what exactly the image. I see the image, but I still don't know basically how to mythologize it. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Even though I just pointed out, the Bhagavad Gita effectively has already done it, so you don't need to do anything new. But it's reality.